no startup works at all. If it worked, you wouldn't be a startup, you'd be a company, because there are many links in the chain and you have not connected them all. And so basically you have to find the money, you have to make a supply chain, you have to have it manufactured into a good, it has to be put into a box, which gets stacked into a pallet, which then gets put into a boat, which then shipped across an ocean, and then it has to have a hunger for it somewhere, which you have to manufacture that hunger as well. These are many steps and you have to do them all. And I am always struck by how little momentum each one of them has on its own, even when you have a product that people really, really like and send you nice notes about and things like that. There's just a lot of doing involved in all of this sort of thing. So again, many links in the chain, you have to do them all. If none of them work, if one of them it does not work, the whole thing sort of falls down around your ears. And so I kept hearing about this sort of notion of sort of unfair advantage, of like, for a startup to work, you have to have some notion of unfair advantage. And for us, it was that we had day jobs and we had a super pro team that were very senior, very smart, and very well connected. Most of this is done through sort of personal connections, through factory things. So for example, because I got stuck running a program at a college for a couple of years, which I had a great time. I think I made positive change on it. It was very taxing to me, and I didn't become a designer to be an administrator at a college. But I was happy to be done with it. At the same time, I did a lot of favors for people who were a lot more senior than I was. So when it came time for me to manufacture something, I had a network of people that I could pull a favor from. I'm manufacturing this kind of object. Can you make introductions to factories? In which case, I'm vouched for by someone the factory has dealt with before. And now I have a Rolodex of people who will listen to me, will take a quote. So we had about a list of about 50 factories which were potentially good. About 8 of them really fit the bill. 3 of them had reasonable deals, and we made a deal with one of them and went to production and tooling with that. The sort of to take it to sort of Paul Graham, the analogy is a startup is like a mosquito. Like, you really only have the money and the human bandwidth to go on offense. Like, you can't take any sort of blow. And so it's all about sort of keeping the momentum up. And because of that, there's a lot of decisions of like, well, we can hedge our bets here or that, or we're just going to go for it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, so what? So things that were not so visible to me. One is production. Even if you have a great relationship with your primary manufacturer, you are the last in line. If something f***s up because you f***ed up, your time gets bumped on the line. If they f*** it up, your time gets bumped on the line. If somebody else who's bigger than you screws something up, or they need more time, you get bumped. So for anything else, anything at all, you are the last in line for something to happen, and this causes delays. Other things like there is no support. In any sort of real company, you have someone who's there to answer the door or unclog the toilet or think about the big vision for the company. As a startup, it's amazing how many little things start to sort of eat away at your day that you have to sort of manage in a real way. The other thing is validation is a real thing. I will talk about crowdfunding in a minute. I completely changed my position on crowdfunding. When I first was getting started, this was in the very early days of Kickstarter and before even Indiegogo existed. People would say, "Oh, you're doing a startup. You should really do this Kickstarter thing." And I'd be like, "Yeah, myself. I'm a professional industrial designer. People pay me a lot of money to do this. I have been doing it for years for real clients." And then one day I was in a meeting with a VC, which I shouldn't have been in a meeting with, but he said, "I love what you're doing. I want to invest, but I want you to do Kickstarter first." And it sort of, one, he knew what it was, and then B, he saw it as real validation, which totally impressed me. It actually totally works that way, which is kind of amazing that by having a public presence, you can get real user feedback, you can get actual quote sales, and you can have all these built-in metrics for what is good and who it is appealing to about your product. The other thing is, if you do something well, the whole industry kind of wakes up and says, "Nice job, kid." And that was a big surprise. I did not expect to be sort of reached out to and befriended and helped along the way to such a degree that we have been. I just sort of expected a shrug, some happy customers, and that was it. But really, it's been sort of a nice communal thing of people are really happy that we're thinking about this problem in a new way. It's not their realm, but it's really kind of gratifying to have Gary Fisher come by and say, these are really nice. Like, I really want to help you guys out. This is cool. That's, I don't know if it does translate to actual monetary gain, but it was just, through this whole endeavor, I've met some of the coolest, most like successful and interesting and helpful people that I've had any occasion to meet in my very networked life. Another sort of thing that's sort of not that visible to me was that bootstrapping is really hard on personnel. That juggle that we can do by having real jobs as a professor or as designers elsewhere or as engineers wherever, it's very difficult to juggle like a real professional life in which you're somehow accomplished, a real social like adult life somewhere else, and also the startup life, which is very demanding and does not respect your personal bounds to getting things done. It's just hard on everybody to a degree that I had not anticipated. This was a sort of real eye-opener for me. The other one is, like, as the sort of leader of this particular ship, it's kind of this lonely role, and I get to commiserate in sort of this weirdly emotional way with my friends who are also in the similar role, which is that you have to be the sort of like ultra rah-rah, type A, straight ahead, we're going to go, charge down the cannons. At the same time, you have to be a complete critic and make sure that we haven't like left any T uncrossed or I undotted. And that sort of flipping back and forth between those roles of being the sort of like needling, like cajoling, borrowing like favors, and also sort of just pushing ahead no matter what is really, really tough. Just somehow the flip between that mental state, it's not that I am the editor and that is my role within the group, it is that I am the editor and the leader at the same time. And that's not to say all on me, I think it's hard on everybody, but as the sort of like the one who has the most flexible schedule, I just sort of defaulted into that position. And it was just a really kind of strange place to be. The other one is that, I mean, we're in the bike industry. Whatever you guys are running into has your sort of own local issues. The bike industry is so freaking weird. I had no idea. So here's the thing you didn't know probably, which is that bike stores don't make money off bikes. They break even on bikes. You would think, therefore, they would concentrate on the things they make money off of, like bike accessories, like expensive bike lights. But no, they don't care. They like bikes. They want to move bikes. They're happy to move bikes. They open a bike store because they like bikes and they want to sell next year's bike, this and that. So just getting the attention of a bike store who watches no media, who pays it no matter how many awards, how many, if we're in the friggin' New York Times or the best design vlogs or we win Bicycle Award, it doesn't matter. They haven't seen it. They pay attention to no media. They're not interested in new lines. They don't want new business relationships. That is the strangest local thing I've ever found. And it's just a little frustrating, but we're plowing ahead. Has a stranglehold on it by two primary distributors, which one distributes 65% of everything that's sold, which stifles any sort of strong trade groups. Because that distributor has such a pull, they can sort of pull against everything else. So, I mean, I've done work in the outdoors industry before. The trade group puts on concerts and at the trade shows, and it's a good, fun time, and everybody has a great time. At the bike trade show, there's nothing like that. There's gold sprints, which is, if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. Anyway, so there's also there is sort of alliances to be made. So we are working with BMC and some other bike groups. That's fantastic. We can promote them. They can promote us. There's always weird certifications because we ship with a plug in a box. We have to get certified in the CE certification in Europe. We have to have the plug certified UL in the US. There's all these sort of the ROSE certifications of materiality. There's things that you might not think to look for, but you should proactively look for them before it becomes your problem. Anyway, to keep going, hardware is hard. It is a huge initial investment. Unlike software, it cannot scale exponentially or instantly. It scales only linearly. It's very long lead times. There's high risk. Things like typhoons really happen. And logistics are a total pain in the ass. So not only are you having to actually make the connections, but you're actually having to create the hunger for it out in the world. Dealing with ongoing service is non-trivial, nor is SKU count. By making these lights in 3 colors, we probably tripled our risk for the whole endeavor by shipping them with plugs instead of just cables. Again, we tripled our SKU count once again, and by misallocating or mispredicting how many colors at which rate are wanted in which region, you can actually kill your company because you can't sell through, or you've put the wrong plug, which is now sitting in a warehouse, which is needed elsewhere in the world. All of these sort of logistical things are you kind of realize, like, people say, you need the 5x margin on something. Okay, that makes sense in theory. When you get in the teeth of it, it's not just this sort of nice like mandate. It's actually completely real that you need that to make the decisions to cushion yourself against the things that you have definitely up, which there are many. So that's the sort of like local turf of the hardware startup, aside from the bootstrapping. Any questions, interest waning? I don't know. So the bootstrapping part of it, I didn't intend for this, but we basically, we were interested. We thought we had a good idea. We tested it out. We actually asked a bunch of people in the bike industry who knew more about the industry than us, do you think this is a good idea? We went to the biggest distributor in the industry and said, hey, if we were to really make this thing, would you be interested in buying it? And they said, absolutely. And we think we could sell this many of them a year. That sounds great. At some point, we decided to kickstart it. So we kickstarted it. We called that Kickstarter sales. And then we ended up with the SBA reached out to us, which is the Small Business Administration, a low interest 10-year loan, which then got us through production. And then we've sort of been selling through lights at different points. And we've screwed up a lot of things along the way. We have lines of credit with banks. There's a lot of sort of different things there. But that is the chain of financial events by which we were able to bootstrap this. So anyway, we have total autonomy, but it's sort of like the total autonomy of like a homeless person in a way. You know, it's like you have very narrow. When you're bootstrapped, you have very narrow bounds of what you can do because you have these sort of very narrow bounds between the shores of this river, which is your cash flow. And so, and also if you have someone else who's investing in you, like that may or may not be an uncomfortable situation of when they're rewarded for investing back in you, but it's also somebody who has a stake in your success. And so that's one less advisor that you're accountable to, but one less person sort of looking out for your interests. That may be a small thing, maybe a big one. I think when you are scaling up, we have bootstrapped for 3 years, so there's a reality to how many things that we can point to very specifically of like we sell X and not Y. Whereas the fantasy, if we had, say, taken investment immediately after the Kickstarter because we did well and because we had like people reaching out to us to be partners immediately after that moment, we probably could have sold the fantasy of the company at a much higher valuation then than the reality of what it takes to make a bike company these days. And so, and it's sort of like you can have a smaller slice of a bigger pie, or the entire pie that is a small pie that you have to then like keep putting the filling in. Anyway, and then equity is sort of this funny thing of like, it really only matters on exit, like, and a successful exit. So there's a small thing there, and it's also hurt feelings of like, because it is a sort of token evaluation within the company, but like on the day-to-day, you just fucking gotta get work done. Crowdfunding really has sort of turned things on its head. It is early recognition. You can go with a pre-production sample, get quote sales. They're not really sales, but they are money, and then go with that recognition. You get also built-in sort of like metrics with it. There's actually even, especially right now, there's favorable currency markets right now for the US, for people in the US, which is great. It's harder to sell in Europe a little bit, but everything else is in your favor. And then the connectivity of Alibaba, as mentioned before, is actually like fantastic. The fact that incubators have like open applications, this is sort of an example of that, one version of it. The fact that you can send files these days, like I don't know, I'm a little bit older than some people here, but like the fact that things are easy to transfer is a really big thing in my life. And then to sort of reference Berkeley Sourcing Group as you're sort of founding all this thing, there are some really awful, terrible people, and they're not one of them. We've been looking to do a project with them for a while, but they really are about sort of making a real connection, helping you be productive in the world. That they're one example of sort of the good people I've met like throughout this whole process. There's a lot of, but which is all this to say is that there's increased connectivity for people who know, like, are less than fully experienced manufacturers to actually get things done now, so it's more accessible. And again, about the last crowdfunding thing, which is that it is this own genre of media. It really has, and I was just sort of like, I really turned on my head. I really didn't like it for a long time, but people watch that stupid video. Amazingly enough, people feel like they're connected to you. Things like, and if you look at successful crowdfunded projects, things like a slim wallet, which is this promise of this beautiful streamlined life. Well, the fact that my wallet is fat is not because the leather is thick, it's because I've shoved my life into it. And if you have the slim wallet, you will also do the same thing. If you saw it on a store shelf, it would look like a wallet in the range of other wallets, but somehow the promise on that video, the fact that I can't touch it, the fact that there's this sort of like lifestyle component to it really works. Crowdfunding is this new thing, and it's actually pretty amazing. The other thing is that we talked about it earlier, but it really does equal validation. If people like it there, it is a real thing in some way. It really is a lever to then launch into the next thing. It also, like, nicely enough, being software has great feedback. You can see people which products people like more. You can see which media outlets they come from, where they clicked in through. You can you grow an email list through that thing. So there's all these sort of inbuilt loops as a part of the system from the get-go, which give you much better metrics about who wants and likes your product. The way to think about it for us is that it's a free international marketing campaign. People will watch the video, people will act on it, people will share it with their friends, and you have media actually trolling just those sites to support and do whatever else. So it's always difficult to sort of scale the company. We're moving forward with additional products, and we're about to move forward with additional launches as a company. It's been a long, hard road. I feel like we're on the cusp of really stabilizing and doing something new. It's been really fun. It's been really, really frustrating. And I think it's been, I can say that with the confidence that we did make a great product. It is a good one. It is have a good business model. It is all the math, and then everything still exploded around us in a good way, and we're still sort of struggling through it. I think I read an interesting online article the other day, and it wasn't that these musicians who released their whole breakdown of their tour costs, and people were like, why would you do this? You've made it, you're big musicians. And their reply was, it's not that we've made it, it's that we are making it. It is the continual struggle, and we are moving forward. So anyway, thanks.